Good morning, Europe. Good afternoon, Asia. Welcome to our distinguished speakers, our global audience and viewers on YouTube, to this virtual event on Eu Asean cooperation in the Indo-Pacific. I'm Steven Blokmans, Director of Research at CEPS, and it's my pleasure to open this webinar, which comes amid increasing turbulence in the Asia-Pacific region, not just as a result of the withdrawal of the US and its allies from Afghanistan, the advances of China in regional waters, incursions into Taiwan's air defense zone, but also as the fallout of AUKUS continues to reverberate. An unveiling of a submarine deal which happened on the eve of the publication of the European Union's strategy for the Indo-Pacific. This webinar asks whether a rules or values-based approach has any chance in the Indo-Pacific, and whether the EU and the ASEAN could cooperate in that regard. And this event is organized with a view to the 13th ASEM Summit, which will be hosted by Cambodia online next week on the 25th and 26th of November. For those who don't know, the ASEM, or the Asia-Europe meeting, has been convened since 1969, based on an equal partnership, and has been the multilateral forum to promote greater mutual understanding between Asia and Europe, mainly through political dialogue, but also economic cooperation and people-to-people exchanges. It brings together 49 partner countries from Asia and Europe. It includes EU member states, ASEAN countries, of course, but also China, Korea, Japan, India, Australia, and Russia. It's run by, well, EU and ASEAN Secretariat, and ASEM cooperation represents a significant global weight. ASEM partners represent around 60% of global GDP, 60% of the global population, and 60% of global trade. So it is an important grouping. And as an evolving dialogue process over the past decades, ASEM has forged a comprehensive partnership between Asia and Europe at many levels, from the high-level summits to civil society engagement. And in this respect, the Asia-Europe Foundation has served to implement ASEM's leaders' political visions into concrete activities benefiting the peoples in Asia and Europe. CEPS itself has undertaken an EU-funded study which was co-authored by the convener of this meeting, Venian Hu, and our colleague Jacques Pelkmans, in the run-up to ASEM's 20th anniversary, which was about 5-6 years ago, to assess the functioning of the ASEM. And they concluded, among others, that the combination of its flexibility and the commitment to political, economic, and people-to-people exchanges enables ASEM to address topical priority issues and to shape international policy, the international policy agenda. But given the contestation that we see all around on in our newspapers and on our screens every day, one wonders if that is going to be enough. And with us to make sense of all of that, we have a very distinguished panel. I would like to thank, on behalf of CEPS, all of their contributions. Very much look forward to what they have to say and to the ensuing discussion, which will be moderated by, as I mentioned, Venian Hu, who organized this webinar. And Venian, on behalf of all of us, thank you very much for convening and leading this session. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Stephen. Specifically on the ASEAN and the EU. Now, the ASEAN and the EU, they have a comprehensive and multifaceted relationship for more than 4 decades. And this relationship has been upgraded to a strategic partnership in 2020. In recent years, because of the increased economic dynamics in the Indo-Pacific, And because of the heightened geopolitical tensions, each side has developed their respective Indo-Pacific strategy. The ASEAN bloc sits in the center of the geographical mapping of the EU's Indo-Pacific strategy. Some ASEAN members are parties directly involved in the trade, investment, environmental, and security considerations that has formed the rationale of the EU's Indo-Pacific strategy. So based on this, perhaps it's natural for the EU to support the principle of ASEAN centrality. But we do observe some differences which are also expected since ASEAN and the EU are two different actors. A very fundamental difference that we observed is that ASEAN is silent on values, while the EU has vowed to conduct values-based initiatives with like-minded countries in the region. Against this backdrop, our seminar asks two questions. First of all, could the ASEAN and the EU identify synergies in their respective endeavors in bringing about peace, security, prosperity in the region? And secondly, does ASEAN have a role to play in this, given the EU's now values-based approach for with like-minded countries in the region? We ask that ASEAN question because many ASEAN questions are in the Indo-Pacific, but not all of them are EU's like-minded friends. And secondly, the EU has been a driving force behind the ASEAN for the past 26, 27 years for the EU's commitment to multilateralism and for the EU's huge financial contribution to the ASEAN process. We have with us 4 speakers: Ambassador Igor Driesmans, EU Ambassador to ASEAN; Ambassador Ling Honghuai, Mission of Singapore to Belgium, the Netherlands, Luxembourg, and the EU; Ambassador Toru Morikawa, Executive Director of Asia-Europe Foundation; and Dr. Yulei Hui, Director of the EU Center based in Singapore. We would like to hear your views. So each speaker, please have 10 minutes to set out their views, and then Q&A will start. To our participants, please write your questions in the Q&A box. If a question is addressed to a specific speaker, please also indicate. Thank you so much. Ambassador Driesmans, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Manyan. Dear friends, colleagues, Ambassador Lim, Ambassador Toru, Dr. Lei Wei, Steven, good day to all of you, and thank you for having me today for this very good discussion, excellent panel. I tried to address mainly your first question, what kind of synergies we could see between the EU and ASEAN based on our respective Indo-Pacific strategies to foster peace, stability, prosperity. But before I do so, maybe just some facts about EU-ASEAN. Number one, we are ASEAN's largest development partner with an envelope of 250 million euro. Number two, we have the widest spectrum of technical or expert dialogues. We have 20 different dialogues on construction standards, on climate, on high-speed computing, you name it. Three, we are a big trade partner of ASEAN. We've always been, and we continue to be. Number four, we are increasingly a security partner in different areas of both non-traditional threats and more traditional threats. I thought I'd start with this introduction because these facts are not necessarily always known. There's a lot of focus on US-China rivalry, but I think if you would look at the different partnerships that ASEAN had, we would probably be the most comprehensive one, even if we haven't looked for that particular label, others have. Now, to come back to your question, Wenyan, I would see three main synergies, and I think you hinted to some of them already in your introduction. The first one is and remains on economy and economic connectivity, so to speak. We know that ASEAN continues to experience solid growth, said to be the fourth largest economy in not such a long distance, depending on which expert you listen to, but also a very rapidly growing middle class, doubling in the space of 15 years. And that, of course, offers a lot of trade and business opportunities for us and for our companies. Again, we are a very large investor, the second investor in the region. We are a large trading partner, actually the third largest trading partner of ASEAN, and vice versa. And we have a very wide spectrum of activities ongoing. Let me just mention a few. Under our so-called Arise Plus program, we support trade facilitation within the region. So it is all about standard setting on a large variety of issues. It's about helping businesses within ASEAN to take full benefit of the ASEAN economic community. We have launched not so long ago the ASEAN Customs Transit System together with our ASEAN friends, the first ever ASEAN computerized customs system, allowing one truck to move to another from one country to another without any paperwork. So a wide spectrum of different activities ongoing. In addition, we are moving more and more into green infrastructure. 2 weeks ago, we announced a contribution of 783 million euro to the ASEAN Green Catalytic Finance Facility. So sustainable infrastructure in the ASEAN region managed by the ADB. But we really want to scale up that type of activities in the future in our upcoming financial framework as well. And use more and more, say, blending possibilities to do so. Of course, in addition to these cooperation elements, we have just concluded a comprehensive air transport agreement. It's a very big deal. It's a big deal for our companies, airline companies, but also for consumers. We hope to sign that. Our experts, our legal experts are now doing the legal scrubbing, but we hope to sign that beginning of next year. It's about market access, but also about safety, security, and so on. And of course, we also continue to work on towards a region-to-region FTA. We know that it takes a bit of time, but after Singapore and Vietnam, we're now accelerating very much with Indonesia, our trade negotiations. So we hope that with that, we will be able to move to the next step. So I think that's the first, say, converging interest or synergy, as you said. Secondly, from a security point of view, we have, I think, as Europe, a big interest in the region. It was mentioned in the introduction, the growing political tension, the military spending, and the kind of critical point here is the stake that we as EU have in the stability and security of the South China Sea, because so much of our trade is passing through those straits. So we have been stepping up our security and defense cooperation with ASEAN. As a matter of fact, we also have a defense attaché now here in our mission. And that means working on issues such as cybersecurity, such as counterterrorism, such as maritime security. We hope to have another high-level dialogue early next year. And more broadly on different defense and security aspects. So bilaterally with different countries, with ASEAN as a group, but also within the ASEAN architecture. I think about the ASEAN Regional Forum, of which we're probably the most active member, but also within, we hope, the ADMM Plus sooner rather than later. So that's, I would say, the second big chunk of work that we need to scale up our ambition on. And the third one, and again, you hinted to that in your introduction, is synergies on the green and sustainable transition here in ASEAN, but globally. We know that ASEAN is increasingly and rapidly increasingly a CO2 emitter because of its rapid growth, but also because of the large use of fossil fuel in the region. But it's not just about CO2 emissions. Also for biodiversity, ASEAN is an absolute hotspot. Only 3% of the landmass, but 80% of the species worldwide are to be found here in Southeast Asia. So we want to work much more with ASEAN in these fields. Again, there are a large number of activities ongoing. We talk on green tech, we talk on circular economy, we talk on clean energy, but we want to bring this much more to a political level. And we hope that next year we can have our first EU ASEAN ministerial meeting on environment and climate change. So to give that political impetus in the discussion. At the same time here too, we want to scale up cooperation. We work already together on peatland management. We work together on smart green cities. We work together on biodiversity, but we want to change scale. And you might have seen yesterday, Commissioner Urpilainen and ASEAN Sekjen Dato Lim Jok Hoi announced a new initiative, a Green Team Europe initiative, whereby we pool our funds between the European Commission and a large number of member states, as well as the European Investment Bank, to do exactly that, to work on the green transition, on climate resilience, on biodiversity, on all of the issues I mentioned. So I think that would be, trying to answer your questions on what would be the synergies we could find. Of course, there is a lot more that we do together, be it on people-to-people mobility, be it on fighting COVID-19 and so on. But I think these are the key issues, I think, of particular interest to us, but also of ASEAN in working with the EU, because really, I think we want to see a strong ASEAN. We want to see a strong ASEAN. We want to strengthen its internal integration through ASEAN community building, but also its external positioning through supporting ASEAN centrality, genuinely supporting ASEAN centrality, not just lip service. And because we think strong ASEAN, a strong regional architecture will help us to manage tensions in the region, and will also be for us a major partner in our, say, quest for multilateralism. My last point is that next year will be a big year for EU-ASEAN relations. We will celebrate 45 years of dialogue partnership. That means that we hope to be able to host in Brussels all of the heads of state and government of ASEAN. It also means that all of our heads of state and government will meet them. So it's an important year ahead of us. Also good to take stock and reflect on the future. So again, thank you for having me, and I look forward to the debate.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Driesmans, for setting out a very clear picture of the synergies between the two blocs. Now I would like to pass the floor to Ambassador Lin. Please, Ambassador.
Thank you very much, Winnie, and thank you for the introduction, and thank you for inviting me to join you on this panel as well. A very good morning and good afternoon to my fellow panelists and to all the participants tuning in from Europe and from Asia. I would like to just make 3 very brief remarks. I know we have 10 minutes, but it's very good to leave more time for questions and answers because that's where you get the real flavor of the sentiments. So just let me make 3 very brief points during my session. The first is in response to the title of rules or values-based approach. Personally, I think that is a dichotomy that I wouldn't subscribe fully to, particularly the comment that ASEAN is silent on values. I think that perhaps is factually not 100% accurate. If you look at the ASEAN Charter in the first 2 articles, Article 1 on purpose, Article 2 on principles, you would find quite a long list of values that ASEAN and its member states have subscribed to. For instance, adherence to rule of law, good governance, principles of democracy, constitutional government, respect for fundamental freedoms, promotion and protection of human rights, amongst other things. So it is quite a list that I believe is shared by the EU and many others as well. So, it is something that ASEAN is quite proud of as well. And this is in its very fundamental charter. So, I would like to think that ASEAN is not just about rules, it is also about values, a lot of which is shared by the EU. And at the same time, I think it's EU probably would also agree that their approach is not wholly values-based, but one which is also based on very sound rules and international norms as well. So it is a very broad spectrum of approach that we find ourselves, and the EU's approach and ASEAN's approach does have a very significant overlap, which allows us to cooperate very well on a broad range of issues, which moves me on to my second point to answer the question of can the EU and ASEAN cooperate in the Indo-Pacific? And I think the answer is absolutely. It's a big resounding yes. I would subscribe very much to what Ambassador Driesmans had said. I think he has outlined the entire scope of the ASEAN-EU cooperation in such wide areas and subject matters. We have already been doing so for coming to 40 years. Next year, we would be celebrating, as Ambassador Driesmans said, our 40th year of relations of the EU as a dialogue partner for ASEAN. And in these 40 years, I think you can see how much we have moved together, both between the two organizations and as well as between the member states of each organization as well. If you look at the ASEAN Plan of Action, for instance, the most recent Plan of Action, the 5-year Plan of Action, clearly there are a wide range of shared objectives and shared projects across a whole range of issues, from political security cooperation to the economy, to now increasingly as well to public health, to sustainability, to the environment, to climate. And the last report that came out during a review of the Plan of Action suggests that close to 90% of what ASEAN and the EU has set up to do were accomplished. So I think it is a very good record of both not only of the commitment and the capacity and the will of both sides to work with each other in the Indo-Pacific, or as it was used to be known, the Asia-Pacific. So the short answer to that would be yes. And my third point would be looking forward to the future, to what else can ASEAN and EU do. And I think, again, Ambassador Driesmans has beaten me to this point that, there is certainly a wide range of synergies that we can explore together. If you look at the Indo-Pacific strategies from both ASEAN as well as from the EU, I think it is very heartening to see that both are very open, both are very inclusive, and both are very broad-ranging. And therefore, I think it certainly allows us to explore to the fullest potential that each side can bring to the table. Ambassador Riesman has touched on, I think, the key points of what we want to do. So let me just perhaps add a little bit to them. I think in terms of economic cooperation, we see great potential for the work with between ASEAN and the EU on the green transition, for instance, on the digital dialogue, on trade and commerce, on the region-to-region free trade agreement. I think we would be very, very keen to see how we can fit our two platforms and our two visions from ASEAN, and also with the EU's perhaps a Fit for 55 framework as well, and which we try to encourage each other to raise ambitions across the board on sustainability. On developing digital and green economies, I think this is the way of the future, and both the EU and ASEAN would benefit from working with each other to establish common standards and new norms for new and emerging technologies and taxonomies that will govern our economies. Digital economy in ASEAN is expanding at a tremendous rate, and we believe it's the same in the EU as well. ASEAN is also the fastest growing internet market in the world, with more than 150,000 new internet users every day. This will add an estimated $1 trillion to regional GDP over the next 10 years. Therefore, I think it is very timely for EU and ASEAN to try to work together towards a digital economy agreement to establish common standards and to tap on these opportunities. The ambitions for a region-to-region FTA, Ambassador Riesman has also elaborated on this. I think it's a very natural progression of events given the close interdependence of our economies. We already have bilateral FTAs between Singapore and Vietnam and the EU, and this will serve as building blocks towards a region-to-region free trade agreement. On connectivity, the Comprehensive Air Transport Agreement, I think the conclusion of negotiations is a very positive, a very good sign towards possible work that we can continue to conclude an agreement. Cybersecurity is also another area that we can advance regional cooperation for sure. There is the partnership that we have in cyber capacity building that is already ongoing. Where we could continue to tap on this via channels such as the ASEAN Ministerial Conference on Cybersecurity, as well as in Singapore itself, we have the ASEAN Singapore Cybersecurity Center for Excellence, which should serve as nodes in which you can continue to push for such cooperation. I won't mention too much, go into detail on the rest, because I think they are fairly self-evident in terms of traditional security, in terms of cooperation in public health, particularly in this pandemic. And, we look forward to also collaborating closer with the EU on the emerging areas of concern, such as supply chain resilience and connectivity, pandemic preparedness. So just let me say, and by saying that certainly there exists great potential and synergy between EU and ASEAN in the future. If you look at both strategies for the Indo-Pacific, I think we can identify many common approaches. We can certainly look towards more concrete initiatives to take the collaboration forward. And therefore, I think ASEAN certainly looks forward to working even more closely with the EU to make the Indo-Pacific an open, diverse, inclusive region, one which is welcoming of participation from all interested partners, and one which is conducive for growth and to be effective in tackling global challenges. So let me end on this point. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Ling. Now, please, let's now welcome Ambassador Morikawa from Asia-Europe Foundation, or ASEF. ASEF has a very unique position as a conduit to bring ASEAN leaders' political visions and to the civil society. Over the past 25 or 26 years, ASEF has done a great job to connect the civil society with ASEAN leaders. What our previous two speakers have not yet touched on ASEAN and ASEAN's roles. Maybe Ambassador Morikawa could share with us. Thank you.
Please unmute yourself.
Sorry, it's still digitally divided. Thank you for the introduction. Ajata, thank you so much for giving me an occasion to speak in this very important webinar. So, warm greetings from Singapore. My name is Toru Morikawa, the Executive Director of Asia Europe Foundation, SF. SF is a sole permanent institution established in the Asia Europe meeting, ASEM process. ASEM 13 summit meeting will be organized next week. So ASEM summit is one of the major inter-regional fora at the highest level to discuss how to enhance the cooperation of the international community to address the issues of common concern. In this light, today's meeting is very timely and pertinent. Today, allow me to introduce the work of ASEP, the institution in the ASEP process, and share some thought on the exchange between Asia and Europe. First, let me introduce the work of ASEP. ASEP was established in 1997 after the establishment of ASEM in the previous year. ASEP is an intergovernmental organization whose members are 51 ASEM partners and EU and ASEAN secretariat. Our mission is separated in the doubling agreed principle to enhance intellectual, cultural, and people-to-people exchange between Asia and Europe. For nearly 25 years, the ASEP has been working on the thematic areas of common concern of Asia and Europe. Actually, ASEP is implementing annually about 15 projects on governance and economy, sustainable development and public health, culture, education, and communication. Allow me to introduce some of our flagship projects. In the area of governance and economy, it is the informal ASEM seminar on human rights. This program, which is funded and co-organized by Asian and European member countries, is a remarkable example of Asia and Europe dialogue and cooperation in the area of human rights. It is an important forum for civil society representatives, academics, and government officials from ASEAN partner countries to engage in non-confrontational and informal debate on human rights issues. Earlier this year, Republic of Korea hosted a seminar on the theme of human rights of older persons. Despite its hybrid format, the seminar provided a solid platform for the officers and experts to gather online and on-site and to formulate recommendations for better protection of human rights of older persons. Public health, ASEP has been conducting the public health projects since 2009 under the ASEM initiative for the rapid containment of pandemic influenza funded by the government of Japan. Consists of ASEM stockpiling of antiviral drugs and personal protective equipment, PPE, as well as ASEM Public Health Network. The former so-called stockpile project was endorsed by the ASEM partners as a national initiative in an attempt to enhance the preparedness for the pandemic influenza through the stockpile of PPE such as masks, gowns, and gloves, and medicines. Under this project, in collaboration with WHO and MOFA Japan, ASEP dispatched PPE to several Asian countries to fight against the COVID-19 pandemic since the start of the pandemic. ASEP continues to contribute to the international community in practical ways through this project. Meanwhile, ASEP PHN, Public Health Network, ASEP's intellectual exchange project in the field of public health, in which ASEP has a strong network of experts, also continues to play its role in combating the pandemic. For example, the ASEP Public Health Network hosted the Pandemic and the Economy webinar earlier this year, featuring good practices and lessons learned from the initial stage of the pandemic responses across Asia and Europe, and generated a policy brief document useful for future pandemic preparedness and response. In the area of culture, the ASEAN Cultural Festival showcases the rich cultural diversity and creative collaborations of Asian and European artists through theater, dance, music, visual arts, and interdisciplinary presentations. Funded by EU, the festival provides a concrete platform for ASEAN member countries to represent the diversity of arts and culture to wider audiences, alongside ASEAN summits and ASEAN foreign ministers meetings. Since 2009, ASEAN also manages the digital platform Culture 360, providing free access to information and opportunities on art and culture in Asia and Europe to artists, cultural professionals, and policymakers. Another summit side event, partly funded by EU, is an editor roundtable. Eminent journalists from Asia and Europe gather and discuss the common issues. This year, they will exchange views on the fake news. In the area of education, our project outcomes, such as policy recommendations and ASEAN-wide studies on pressing education issues, feed into the deliberations of the ASEAN education process and ASEAN education ministers meetings. ASEF is facilitating people-to-people exchanges between Asian and European youth through programs like the ASEF Young Leaders Summit. Our education projects are literally playing a catalytic role. The network of alumni we created are serving as solid social link between Asia and Europe and led to different initiatives and the setup of organizations between Asia and European young leaders, such as STEA, the Student Think Tank for Europe and Asia Research. Right after the summit, we will organize the Asia-Europe Environment Forum, funded by Asian and European partners. This event will focus the circular food system to combat climate change. ASEF will promote the dialogue and cooperation between Asia and Europe in climate change. I hereby testimony ASEF is continuously serving as a platform of dialogue and cooperation at different levels through our intellectual, cultural, and people-to-people exchange between Asia and Europe for almost a quarter century. While the size of our organization is small, our work is divided into 7 areas. It is certainly a challenge for us, but I think that ASEF should continue to be a platform for dialogue and cooperation for Asian and European partners, even in the time there are some differences in Asia and Europe. Allow me to share with you some thoughts on the exchange between Asia and Europe, focusing the one between the EU and ASEAN. 3 points. First, ASEAN countries are growing very fast, while the situation is very diverse in the region. Generally, the countries are developing fast to the extent it can be compared with our European countries. This is something very different from 25 years ago. Indonesia has more GDP than the Netherlands. Singapore's GDP per capita is as high as those of Northern European countries. The Philippines and Vietnam are very quickly growing, and their GDP can be compared to some of EU members. The digitalization accelerates their growth. The societies are more and more resilient. More people go to the
Let's see if the ambassador would be back in a second. In this case, maybe Lei Hui, you could start once Ambassador Morikawa is back. Maybe he could join us at the Q&A. Please let me give the floor to Lei Hui. Lei Hui has been following and conducting research on EU-Asia relations for many years. Lei Hui is also our SEP's member of the scientific board of our big project on Trigger, which is about global governance and on the EU's roles in global governance. Lei Hui, the floor is yours.
Sorry, that I think the connection was dropped. And
I'm very sorry, Ambassador Morikawa. May I kindly ask you to join us again at the Q&A? Sorry for that, and let's hear what Lei Hui's answers to the two questions. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, and again, good morning and good afternoon to all who are present in the webinar. Ambassador Igor and Ambassador Lim has elegantly gave us a good picture of the EU-ASEAN cooperation and the synergies between us. So I'll try to be short because we have already here quite comprehensively what are our current areas of cooperation and looking into the future, what are some projects and things that we are working on. So I just wanted to sort of look a bit on a much more sort of abstract level, maybe if I may call it that way, in terms of the synergies we have and what we can do in other multilateral forums. I think if we look at the EU-ASEAN partnership, we have a long-standing relations, and as Wei Mian, you have mentioned, it was only upgraded to a strategic partnership in December 2020, last year. So to me, if we are looking becoming strategic partners, I think we need to take our relationship to a different level, right? We need to cooperate, of course, for our mutual benefit. And we have seen a lot of that going on in terms of the trade, in political dialogue, in many areas on sustainable development and all that. But I think we also need to work together more in some way to try and so-called provide public goods for the region. That means we should work together in terms of, for instance, what I see as trying to shape a different narrative in the Indo-Pacific region. We know that now we talk a lot about the tensions and rivalry, but I hope that from what we see from the EU's Indo-Pacific strategy and of course also ASEAN's outlook on the Indo-Pacific, we see that in some way they are similar because we are looking at a strategy that is much more inclusive, open, collaborative in approach. And of course the EU's Indo-Pacific strategy is based on the EU's strength as a committed multilateral actor. And as I say, it takes an open, inclusive approach towards the region. The strategy is comprehensive and an ambitious blueprint, emphasizing principled and long-term commitment towards partnership for peace and development. At the same time, you look at the ASEAN outlook on the Indo-Pacific, it's also premised on the fact that that these dynamic regions of the Asia-Pacific and around the Indian Ocean, they are closely integrated, and that ASEAN and its member states can play a central role in connecting these two dynamic regions, the Asia-Pacific and the Indian Ocean region. So ASEAN sees the need also for more dialogue and cooperation to promote peace and development and steer the regions away from excessive focus on the strategic competition between the US and China. I think now that the EU and ASEAN have elevated their long-standing relations to a strategic partnership, I think we have a shared interest in what the ambassador Igor has said about building regional capacity, so emphasizing, supporting, and enhancing ASEAN centrality. At the same time, through our interactions, I think we also contribute to the EU's strategic autonomy. So contribute to EU as a strategic autonomy and its sense and identity as an independent actor. So I think in that sense, we can work together to try and rebuild trust to make multilateralism that both regional organizations subscribe to. So we need to support the rebuilding of trust to make multilateralism work better for all those countries that believe in a rule-based order. So I think that's my first point. We have begun engagement, of course, as Ambassador Lim has said, in a number of priority areas that the EU has identified in its Indo-Pacific strategy: sustainable and inclusive prosperity, green transition, ocean governance, and all that. I think we can also, in that sense, we should act more in concert in the various ASEAN-led regional architectures, such as the ASEAN Regional Forum, which Ambassador Igor Driesman has mentioned, that the EU is a very active partner in the ASEAN Regional Forum, and we want to see that being emphasized, that we should really make ASEAN Regional Forum relevant again, because it's again a much more inclusive forum, bringing in all the different partners to really dialogue on political security issues. The other thing is that we know that as you mentioned, the EU and several of its member states have been some of the most dynamic and active partners in the ASEM process. So I think in the upcoming 13th ASEM summit really provides a good opportunity for the EU and ASEAN to contribute towards a broader dialogue on the various connectivity agendas of the ASEM partners. We know now there's a whole lot of connectivity strategies out there. You have the EU's global gateway strategy. You have Japan has its own connectivity strategy. ASEAN, of course, we have our own ASEAN master plan on connectivity. So with all these different so-called connectivity actors in the ASEM forum, I think it gives us a lot of opportunity to use the ASEM platform to come up with a sort of a code of conduct on connectivity, or sort of a multilateralized framework on connectivity to agree on certain standards and rules and principles underpinning all these connectivity projects. So I think it's a good opportunity for EU and ASEAN to really perhaps take the lead in the ASEM process to start the dialogue going on, a code of conduct on connectivity, for instance. And I think that is something I think we should look into. So I should stop there so that we have some time for Ambassador Morikawa to finish his presentation and also to have some questions and answers.
Yeah, thank you very much, Lei Hui. Now, Ambassador Morikawa, could you please maybe spend 2 minutes to finish your answer that was interrupted? Thank you. Ambassador, please unmute yourself.
Yes. Thank you so much. So that thank you. So please allow me to some idea. So that ASEAN countries are more and more ready for that more and more that growing and that becoming really the partner of with the EU, and that the ASEAN countries people may say that they are still have work to do to catch up with the best, but are also conscious and proud of what they have achieved so far. But I have been in my humble career that personally witnessed the rise of the presence of ASEAN countries in different fora. Second, Europe continues to be one of the most important sources of the universal values, visions, and the new way of living in the world. And in navigating through the rapidly and radically changing world, that this is very important for the entire world, including ASEAN countries. So at the same time, that the dialogue that is very important, that the equal partnership is not to tell anything each other, but to present the idea for the considerations of the other side through frank and polite dialogue with full respect and understanding of each other. Third is that the partnership between EU and ASEAN is very essential for the better entire world. That, for example, that in the climate change, that EU and ASEAN can work together to find a solution to cope with that reducing the CO2 to find a solution. And I think this can be applied to other regions who are going to experience the rapid development. So that that ASEAN and EU cooperation is very important in the for the sake of the entire world. And the ASEAN is really, as different speakers said, that are in important forum, and because that the ASEAN is the participants of the ASEAN is EU and ASEAN and other important partners of those regions. So there are that, and the ASEAN has the permanent institution like ASEAN. So I think that the ASEAN has a really low in that regard, and I'm really looking forward to the outcome of the ASEAN 13 summit. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Morikawa. And now we start the Q&A session. We have a question from James Moran, our SEPS senior fellow, who used to be ASEAN's SOM leader for the EU. Jim asks this question: there has been a new push in recent times for an EU-ASEAN trade agreement. Given the coup in Myanmar this year and the consequent difficulties on values, is this now a blind alley? Perhaps Ambassador Driesmans could answer this question. Thank you.
Sure, happy to. I think the short answer is no. I mean, I would take a different example. It's the Comprehensive Air Transport Agreement, which we have concluded and which we will sign next year. So I think there is a way around the issue of Myanmar. And that's the first one. The second one, more generally, Ambassador Lim spoke about your question on values, and he basically said everything that I wanted to say on that question, because I don't think the dichotomy is that ASEAN is silent on values while the EU is preaching. I think ASEAN does care and does care a lot about values. That's what we've seen at the last summit, the last testimony to that. And I think we have many more interests than human rights, although of course that is a major part of our foreign policy. So it's definitely not a black and white situation. But to answer the question is basically I don't see that as an impediment to a region-to-region FTA per se. What might be an impediment is that there is still a rather big gap of ambition on what we would want with an FTA, but that's then a different issue.
Thank you very much. I have perhaps an inconvenient question for Lei Hui. What with those so many Indo-Pacific strategies, different connectivity strategies, will the ASEAN platform be polarized? What do you think? What is your view?
I don't think it will polarize, because ASEAN is a much more, as we know, is a sort of very open dialogue forum, right? Informal. It's based on the concept of equal partnership, and as we know, it is more a dialogue to explore ideas, to get things good, and it's not a place where the real the real action takes place. Let me put it this way. So it's dialogue. So I think that is the best platform, right, to explore sometimes what you can say a bit more sensitive issues, and as we look into the various connectivity. There's so many connectivity actors in the ASEAN platform. You have the Chinese BRI, you have the Japanese, the Indian version. You have, some where the EU and Japan is also talking of how to work together on some of this connectivity agenda. So why not bring all these different partners, and ASEM allow that, because ASEM talk about functional leadership. We talk about working in working groups with different clusters of activities. So that is precisely what I think is a most appropriate platform to look into the different connectivity agendas and come up with some underlying principles, broad principles on the connectivity, how to move forward in terms of social, environmental, sustainability issues and all that. So to explore broadly the kind of underlying principles that govern the project. So I think that is so I mean, that's what I believe, and I've actually talked about this together with other colleagues, and we have actually written a piece. We hope it will come out soon on this.
Thank you very much. Because of the time constraints, I will only select a few questions from the Q&A box. There's a question for ASEAN. How do ASEAN countries feel about the EU, US, Japanese efforts to offer an alternative to China's BRI money? Perhaps this question for Ambassador Lim.
Okay, let me take a stab at this. I think all of these different initiatives do bring about different value propositions, not just to ASEAN, but to all the countries in which they are being offered to. And certainly, I think within ASEAN, the infrastructural needs are immense. We've had various studies done across ASEAN over the years. And one of those that I can remember from the Asian Development Bank suggests that the need can be as high as over 600 billion US dollars over the next decade. And if you look around ASEAN, I think certainly there are many areas which could benefit from improved infrastructure. So I think any efforts to provide this assistance, I think would be up for individual countries to assess. And I think each country would have to make its own determination as to which they would like, or all of them, they would like to be able to be involved in. So in a nutshell, I think that is a short answer to that. But let me just quickly add to the question about Myanmar's involvement in the region-to-region FTA as well. And I think I fully agree with Ambassador Driesman. I think the challenge really is between the level of ambitions that would be required to put together this region-to-region FTA. And I think we all agree between ASEAN and the EU that the issue of Myanmar, which is a very difficult one, even for ASEAN, shouldn't be by itself a reason for either side to not talk or not try to drive progress on the larger agenda between the two. So hopefully that answers the question in the sense that despite Myanmar, which ASEAN is trying to resolve together with its partners and friends around the world, I think we should continue to have a very high level of ambition, high level of objective in trying to develop, in trying to push the relations between the EU and ASEAN to greater heights. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Lim, for this very clear answer. Due to the time constraints, I'm afraid I have to close the panel. But before that, I would like to give each speaker 30 seconds to give their concluding remarks. We will do on the reverse order, starting from Lei Hui, and then Ambassador Morikawa, Ambassador Lin, and Ambassador Driesman. Please, Lei Hui.
Thank you, Winian. I think we, the EU-ASEAN strategic partnership has a lot to offer. We really need to be much more ambitious in moving forward between EU and ASEAN. As I said, we need to focus not only on the mutual cooperation that benefits both regions, but really think broadly about the working together for the public goods to provide so-called regional public goods. And I think there is a lot of room for us to be much more ambitious in our vision and goals of working together.
Ambassador Ling, please. Sorry, Ambassador Morikawa. Sorry, Ambassador Ling.
Thank you. So that again, that I would like to emphasize the importance of the ASEAN, the EU cooperation in the world, so that pursuing the commonalities between two regions, that the world, entire world, will be a better place. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Ling. Please, the floor is yours.
Well, I think this is quite a clear consensus amongst all the panelists here that certainly I think the synergies are present, the potential is there, the will and commitments are also very clearly in the room as well. So we certainly do have a lot to look forward to for the next 40 years of ASEAN-EU relations. And we're all over in ASEAN, we're all very excited and clearly very eager to drive this forward. Thanks.
Thank you. And Ambassador Dries-Mans, please, the floor is yours.
I will agree with everyone. I think the future is bright for EU ASEAN, and I hope it doesn't sound too grand when I say that the world would benefit from a stronger EU ASEAN partnership. And if I can echo what Lei Wei said, I think together we can be an anchor for a different kind of narrative, one that is inclusive, that is cooperative, that is multilateral, and that is rules-based. So we've got enough work to do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Stephen, would you like to say a few words?
I would like to thank everyone. There's a surprising amount of harmony around the virtual table, whilst there are very real and pressing challenges which may extend, the combined willingness to cooperate between EU and ASEAN. Perhaps these are some of the issues that we can unpack in a follow-up seminar with some of you and push the conversation forward. But for now, thank you very much for all of your contributions, and good luck with all of your work ahead, and especially with the next week's ASEAN meeting.
Thank you very much, everyone, and looking forward for future opportunities to work together on EU and Asia. Thank you very much, and
thank you, Stephen, and thank you, Wei Nian,
thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.